Henry, you actually asked me a very important question yesterday, something that's been on my mind a lot as well, which is, will there be a fireplace at our fireside chat? So we chatted with the fire safety marshal. Unfortunately, that was not possible, but we were able to actually pull some strings, and we now have a looping video of a fireplace in high resolution, believe it or not, projected right on the screen here.
And as marketers, all we have to do is make you believe that that it's a real fire by the end of this conversation. So we'll track how good we are, but how well we can do with that.
So Henry, you've had a very diverse set of career experiences. You started off as a lawyer by training. You worked at NASCAR. You worked at a variety of brick and mortar stores as well as pure play e-com. Can you share a little bit about your career path with everyone?
Sure. I'm probably the poster boy for using customer data. Many of you may not know Venus. Some of you may be customers. Venus started as a swimwear brand in the 80s, and by about 2009, had about $30 million in sales. In 2009, it was bought by the Auto Group. They expanded the portfolio of product into not just swimwear, but also fashion, and recently lingerie. And we've grown from about $30 million in 2009 to about $400 million this past year. I'm not the target.
You don't have even a single
No,
Venus
really, I
piece.
don't. Which is why it is so important for us to understand our customer, what she wants, not only from a marketing side and how to message, but cross-functionally from a merchandising side, from an operations side, and we do try and use our team cross-functionally in order to try and drive that message. It is true, I do come from a completely different background, mostly in home improvement with Craftsman and Home Depot, but at the end of the day, understanding what your customer wants is really how you're going to best get the message across and move product out the door.
So with your experience at Sears and Home Depot, traditionally brick and mortar, and Venus, which is more e-com focused, can you tell me a little bit about some of the customer challenges you see organizations face that are primarily brick and mortar versus pure play e-com?
Sure. I think I'm allowed to say this out loud. We're not a customer of Amazon. So I'm hoping Bezos won't kidnap me or something when I walk out the door. But
he's not here, at least.
Yeah, good, excellent. The biggest challenge is not having our own stores. We have to find other ways to craft our brand through our messaging that we do really online and direct. I will say this: Venus and Auto Group in Germany, our parent company, really both started as catalog retailers and have been in the direct-to-customer business for a long time. We continue to use catalog. We're probably one of the few companies these days that still do. We send out probably about 75 million catalogs a year. It's an important part of our business. I look at it like gasoline. It's more expensive and less efficient now than it ever has been, but it still drives the bus. We know that when we put a catalog or a direct mail piece out there, that we're, at this point, driving people to online. Those are our stores. So while some of our competitors, like Victoria's Secret and others, have stores that they can help utilize their brand messaging, we do it through other ways. Some is through direct, through our catalog. Other ways is through our digital platforms and a number of other things that we do. We've even delved into music streaming most recently.
So you mentioned a little bit how brick and mortar can be basically a marketing channel in some ways for retailers. And since Venus is more e-com focused, it's really important to know the customer. Can you talk to me about some of Venus's most important customer goals?
Sure, and it's one of the things that we've turned to utilize Spotlight for in the tests that we're doing. We look at customers by season. So we start with a customer who purchases in the spring. We call them NC1s. Doesn't matter how many times they buy. You can buy once, twice, 3 times, doesn't matter. They stay an NC1. In the next season, so in the fall, they move to an NC2. Whether they've bought or not, they're still considered an NC2. So we're looking at them over the course of an entire year. One of the biggest challenges we're having right now is not new customers. In fact, last spring we got 500,000 new customers, which is the largest new customer base that Venus has ever gotten. So that part we got under control. What our goal is to really get those customers who are in their second season to come back and shop with us and make additional purchases, because there's been some point out about driving to loyalty, whether that's through a credit card or other things. Well, getting that purchase within the second season for us has become a very important driver of that overall loyalty, and we're using Spotlight to really identify and track how we're doing with those particular customers.
Perfect. And you were telling me a little bit about this yesterday, and I thought it was very interesting. Can you share a little bit with the audience about why it's so important they come back specifically in the second season?
Yeah, sure. The way that our seasons are set up, as I mentioned, we were a swimwear company who delved more into fashion. So as you can imagine, just like Mother's Day is the Super Bowl for flowers, spring and summer are the Super Bowl for bikinis.
It's a long Super Bowl.
Or other swimwear of choice. It is a long swimwear, but that's good because beach season is great. But sometimes a swimwear consumer doesn't necessarily transfer over to a fashion purchaser. And even more importantly, sometimes a fashion purchaser doesn't transfer over to a swimwear purchaser. And what I mean by that is, from a swimwear standpoint, we actually design and manufacture almost all of our swimwear. Most of it actually in our office, right in the basement of our office. As we do that, it's much higher margin product. And while not sold at nearly as much as fashion, from a customer standpoint, from a timing standpoint, we do see a much greater margin in that, and our goal is to have people buying fashion eventually coming over and buying our swimwear as well, and creating a whole experience for that customer rather than just one season.
So it's very important for Venus to kind of have this continuity throughout seasons with customers throughout the year. Can you talk to me a little bit about some of the challenges you guys previously faced in terms of tracking that goal?
Yeah, to be quite honest, we have such a scientific approach to so many different segments of customers as we do the math, understanding who we're trying to get catalogs to, who we're trying to reach from an email standpoint, who we're trying to reach from a remarketing standpoint, et cetera, that Spotlight has allowed us to really take this one group of customers and make sure that we have a focus on it. It is true that it gets sent to weekly to a few number of leaders. Since I'm the one sort of responsible for it, I'd much prefer that we see green when it shows the leaders, like you saw at the end, than red.
We can color it all in for next week.
But it really has allowed us to focus in on that particular customer and design different marketing elements around them, both from a direct mail standpoint as well as a electronic standpoint, to make sure we're getting them the right message and reaching out to them in the way that they want to be spoken with.
So one of the findings that Spotlight uncovered for these NC2 customers is that a lot of the decline we were seeing year over year was due to people who were repeating over email. Can you share a little bit about some strategies the team is looking to put in place in order to boost that email retention channel?
Yeah, and honestly, we've touched a lot of it today. We're putting in place a good bit of personalization, understanding what works, what's behind those NC2 customers, why they're shopping the way they are, why they're not shopping the way they are, and why they're not reacting to some of our email messages. And I will tell you this, my son went from he's 16 years old, he went from about 5'6" to about 6'1" in about 20 minutes. And as a result, he went through a lot of growing pains. Venus also grew very fast. And we are also going through some growing pains. Not quite as painful as we can continue to see great results. But we have had to take our time a little bit. And I know Eli was up here earlier and talked a little bit about really taking stock of what you're behind in, or really understanding what you have the ability to do and what you need to have the ability to do. And working with Custora and now working with the Spotlight piece of it has really shown us some of the things that we have to do. We've just put in place, for instance, a promotional marketing tool where we can provide codes to customers at different levels of discounts, and don't have to worry about it getting on Retail Me Not, or unless we wanted to. And with Spotlight, it's also showed us how to do the same thing. So we're able to take different promotions, tie them into different pieces of the NC2 group, and utilize direct mail and utilize digital in order to be able to get those out.
So you touched on this a little bit at the beginning, but Auto Group is very scientific in the way they approach marketing. You guys are a very customer-centric organization. What advice would you have for retailers that are struggling to operationalize some of their customer strategies? It's not easy.
Really, you know, the biggest thing is, don't go in thinking it's easy. But probably, honestly, the biggest advice that I would give, especially to people that are within the marketing organization, is that if you're the only ones utilizing the information, it's bound to fail. It really has to be a cross-functional discussion and a cross-functional use of the data and the recommendations, et cetera, between, in our case, marketing, merchandising, and operations, not store operations, but for those with bricks and mortar, that becomes a very important third leg of the stool. So the more that a marketing team can utilize the information and help break down silos so that everybody's using it. We were discussing a little bit earlier, I have a new associate who's coming on board who's going to be going through the Custora training on next week, early next week. Along with that person, we're also having another member of our business insights team from IT be a part of it, and we're also having our new vice president of customer service come in and be a part of it, so that everybody gets an understanding of how they can use the data, how they can look at the data, and we can all be looking and really making recommendations based on the same thing as opposed to all having our own agendas.
That's great advice. So it sounds like really making sure the insights make their way to every team within the company.
Yep, exactly.
One last question. This is a fun one. So one of my favorite anecdotes from Venus is that you guys are using LTV scores in your call centers to make sure that VIPs really receive an exceptional experience when they call in. Right. Out of all the brands you shop at, where do you think you're the best VIP shopper?
Oh, God.
Does your wife do most of the shopping?
Sure, I've never been allowed to dress myself. I would say probably Publix, until about a month ago when I went on a diet and lost 15 pounds. So.
And what food at Publix do you think was accounting for most of that value?
Apple Jacks.
Oh, I like Apple
That
Jacks
one's easy.
too.
Yeah.
Henry, thank you so much. Really appreciate your sharing your experience with everyone.
You're welcome. Thank you.